Well, Nike certainly captured everyone's attention with the announcement that John Donahoe was stepping down, and it's about time. That's all I have to say. It's about time. I shared that on all of my socials because it felt long overdue based on how Nike was performing. Now, I paid much more attention to the performance in the actual market for them, their stock price. Hasn't been good. Hasn't been good. Now, I also don't carry just one major stock as a majority of anything within my portfolio, and for good reason, because based on when you bought Nike stock, if it was at $100 a share, $120 a share, or even higher, you've certainly seen it go down in your portfolio, but please remember that you don't actually take a loss unless you sell. You just have that loss on paper, so if you don't sell, you don't actually recognize that loss, and hey, it's a little bit better for you as an investor. But I paid attention to that. I know a lot of people within sneakers and sneaker culture, instead, you paid attention to just what was everyone saying? What were the conversations being had? Did it feel as if Nike was still that person, that girl, that thing? And it didn't. Not even for a lot of retros coming out. Not even for a lot of collabs. And I understand there's a very nuanced conversation there because you can feel like there is collaboration fatigue for some, and people are feeling it, whether it's with Travis Scott or Amamanier. I've seen kind of the conversations bubbling, the opinions, and I don't think you're wrong if you do feel fatigue there because you just want to know what's new, what's next. And that's the world that we live in. You do want to see something that is refreshing and that invigorates you in relation to a brand, and we just haven't felt like we've seen that with Nike. And so out goes John, in comes Elliott, and people were excited for the Elliott Hill news to drop, and I mean, that was the only thing on my feed. The only thing. Now, I was also traveling on location in Atlanta with Adidas for the legacy project I'm on in relation to basketball. So I could certainly not have given my thoughts, and I don't want this video to be really long or extensive, but it's great to be able to see the optimism, right? Like there's optimism in the air for Nike, and that usually is seen in stock price. If news breaks and shareholders are optimistic about what they see or they're not, you're gonna see it in the stock price. You just are. So it certainly took a nice little bump up 10%, which is great. One of you had actually commented, which I always appreciate when you comment, and you actually said like, hey, short the stock, and I was like, oh, do you think it'll go lower? I don't think you would have known, right, that John was going to be gone unless you had inside information, and most of us would not have that. So John is out. He is stepping down. That'll officially occur in October, and Elliott Hill will step in. Now, some of you certainly saw like the lengthy resume he had at Nike. So he worked his way all the way up, and people thought he may have initially received that CEO role prior to, or I should say other than John, and that didn't happen. And I now kind of wonder what would have become of Nike in recent times if Elliott took over instead of John, because he understands the retailers, and it's always felt like John had a disconnect. And I mean, if it's not seen in the steep drop we saw in share price, but then the rise in competitors and the place that they now hold within, the hearts of consumers, of what people are going after and what they're buying and the trends. And Nike does feel like they're trying to play catch up. They always feel reactionary. I think that's the best way I can put it. Nike really feels reactionary in a lot of things. I mean, even with this, now that's a whole different conversation. I usually have those on Twitter at _talks with TJ in relation to Asia Wilson. And sidebar, my unanimous MVP, all 67 votes went to her, as they should have. There wasn't a question. There should have never been. She's putting up NBA 2K numbers the entire season. If you haven't been around, okay? First quarter of the first game of the season, she put up 17 points. She let us all know right then and there what it was. So I'm so beyond happy for her, but it just goes to show also just the human she is, with how humble she is. I mean, she's a true servant leader in praising her teammates for everything they do and how they pour into her and that organization, and, helping and allowing her to be the player and the person that she is. That's special. As you continue to rise to the highest heights, never forget the people that are there around you and the people that are there when you don't necessarily feel seen or heard or respected. If you show appreciation to others, I promise you, God will continue to bless you. So I'm so excited for her. We haven't really officially heard like the other awards be dropped because they dropped this information rather soon. But hey, it's out there. I shared. I'm just a fan. I'm not a voter at all. But I simply shared what my picks were on Twitter. So again, that's where most of my conversations happen for WNBA. But yeah, I just had to. Of course, she has a shoe on the way. Have my tee. I picked up the white tee that they finally dropped for her with her logo on the front. I picked up the MVP shirt by Play Society. So spending, because you know what? when you are not, I guess, bogged down by loans and you plan ahead to have that extra cash just in case there are things that you want. Because for me, it's more so clothing for my favorite athletes versus just sneakers. Hey, you can do that. So back to Nike itself. They do certainly feel reactionary in a lot of things. So with Elliott, it does feel like maybe they're trying to be proactive and knowing let's not continue to just ride this John wave and it continue to bring us down. So I will say though, this isn't going to be an immediate change. It's not. The same way with shoes, it still takes 2 to 3 years for these shoes to go to market from concept to actually being in the consumer's hands. That very same thing I think will also happen in relation to this. So if you guys weren't aware, I'm just going to read really quick an excerpt because I think Matt Powell said it really, really well. He said, in the short term, I don't see any immediate impact. In fact, I expect that they will come out and revise guidance down even further because the right things to do will require them to do less business in the short term. For instance, they need to take the Jordan 1, the Air Force 1, and Dunk out of the market for a period of time. Now, this is just his thought as a consultant. They need to go dark on those programs in order to save them. That means they will do substantially less business. They need to do less promotion on Nike.com. That means they will do substantially less business in the short term. There's more pain to come here, frankly, but because he's not because he's not competent, because doing the right thing will require more pain. Sometimes you do have to take a few more steps back to really put yourself forward, and that's okay. It happens, but if that's the right path forward, pulling some things back, because I think they do have to find this balance. And I am going to get to a video because somebody said, hey, Jay the Sneaker Guy did a video. Can you speak on, share your thoughts on that? Because his video and the comments in his comment section were very similar to a poll I ran just about sneakers and them being limited and very rare pairs returning. So I'm going to get to that video very soon. But I think it will be this balance that Nike needs to figure out of the quantity or the options of releases to drop, but then the quantity across all of those to drop. So you don't necessarily want to frustrate consumers with instant sellouts and bots really only having a chance to get things, but you also want to excite them. But when you excite them, you don't know how consumers will react because you're just forecasting, you're guessing. So you have to put out just the right amount of stock to see how they react, and then don't oversaturate it with a million colors right away. There's a lot that goes into it, and I certainly don't have all the answers or know all of them. I don't. But I actually hope that they take note of, hey, at least one thing I've said, just to maybe give a damn about Gen Z. So many people have clowned. They don't care, and I don't understand why we would need to worry about them. There's a reason the whole cradle to the grave, trying to get consumers in from as soon as you can until they are dead and gone. Hey, that is a marketing concept, okay? It is something that they try to do within business. So you're on your way out, just as an FYI, if you're a millennial or Gen X, like we are considered, we're moving over that hill where there are other things that are going to interest us, and not necessarily buying every new release or being, captivated by all the latest tech. It's not always going to be for us. It will need to be for that younger generation. So I'm excited to see what becomes of Elliott Hill taking the reins right now. And again, nice to see stock go up. It is funny how people will still in the comment section say that
Adidas is just dead and gone without Ye.
It reminds me that people a lot of times just own the material goods of these brands and they don't own the actual stock of these companies. Because if you've owned Nike stock and Adidas stock in the same portfolio, I promise you, one has been green more than likely and one has been red. The check has been red, okay? It has. Adidas has grown a great deal from 55 a share to about 120 a share, give or take. That's growth. That's great. So regardless of how you may want to clown them as like a third-class citizen within footwear, they do just fine. They really do. We won't be able to see what some of these other brands do, like New Balance, because they are privately owned. But when you're looking on the street and you're looking on people's feet, they're wearing those brands. So it's not as if Nike is on this high horse pedestal all by themselves. They're not. They have competition. Competition is great for us as consumers because we win with quality options in the market. So again, Nike, welcome back. Whenever you truly do make that transition into what you were, I think it's a great thing. Hopefully you stop with the layoffs and you let people work from home, because that really wasn't the reason why you weren't doing well. All right, I already went over that in a video. I think John wanted to deflect, and that was just really unbecoming of a leader. So I don't think Elliott will take that approach, but time will tell. So I need to run off to be able to enjoy my Las Vegas Aces and the Seattle Storm play in Game 1, because this first Sunday of games have been amazing, and I know the marquee stars are going to be out there, but some names you also need to remember and pay respect to on the New York Liberty: Leonie Fibich. This rookie was amazing, 20 points in her first playoff game, her first start as well. And then Marina Mabrey had 27 points. So we know the big names. We know that Asia Wilson was going to bring it. We know that Nafisa Collier is going to do well. Brianna Stewart, Dewana Bonner, the big names showed up. Dejanay Carrington with the defense, big names showed up. Being their first time Fever in the playoffs, not the best showing, but you know what? They have game 2 to certainly show something. So I'm sure many of us will be tuned in. It's a great time. It is WNBA playoff season, and I will be back on the road. So I'm going to do my best to get one of these shoes out just so you can see how I choose to style them and my thoughts. But I thank you so much for tuning in. Please be sure to check out my last video, though, because you may not know what happens to your credit score once you pay off your student loans, and it could take a 30-point dip. With all that being said, act your age, not your shoe size. Peace.